it's a new dynamic which
Okay. So let's
we'll
let's
look
let's quickly move for the sake of time. So
Yeah.
the whole world is having a buzz over Black Lives Matter, being sparked by what happened in the States with the number of killing of black men, and the protests that are going on there. And most of the sports and football leagues, while resuming, have shown their solidarity towards what is happening there. Um, uh, the game that just passed with Arsenal playing, was it Brighton?
Mm.
Um, and then unfortunately, someone flew a plane over with a banner that was talking about White Lives Matter.
right.
And I
So
was just
City,
recently seeing an interview.
to City
Was
and
it
Burnley.
City's game?
Yeah, City and Burnley.
City and Burnley, yeah.
Mm.
White Lives Matter, and Micah Richards was being interviewed about that. Anyway, so you clearly see it's not just an issue in the States, but the issue of racism, the issue of discrimination based on race is a big issue. How has football been affected by this, and how has it responded to this currently or in the past? Do you think it's responded well? Has this been enough? Is it affecting football? Is it something we should talk about when it comes to football? What do you guys think in all of this? Ayo?
Well, mm, I'm happy that at least the football fraternity is one that has been very strong on issues racism. It is not the first time that the football community has been faced with issues of racism. We've heard of these cases a lot in Italy. There have been a bit of cases in Germany, even in England. And I think the football community has gained experience over time as to, first of all, how to mobilize and be in solidarity against racism, but also how to take specific measures towards individual, at least to the best of their ability, at least take measures against individuals who rear the ugly head of racism. But further to that, I also see generally as human beings, we seem to find something that makes us different from another. Sometimes forgetting that we were all created by God, we are all made in the image of God. We always seem to look for something that makes me better than the other. Sometimes it could be tribe, it could be I am richer than you, it could be race. And I'm not trying to belittle the racism issue, but I just see it as a big human weakness that as Christians, we must be alive to it and deliberately take measures to appreciate. For example, if you're walking on the street or you're in a matatu and someone who seems homeless comes to sit next to you, how will you react? If anything gets lost in that matatu, who will be the first? Who will be the first to be suspected? And I think it's just an attitude thing that we generally have that is only God who can help us through. But for me, it has been a very eye-opening thing because maybe in Kenya we are not specific. I mean, there is no white-black kind of racism, but there are just different biases that could come up in our daily interactions that we really must be alive to, and we must ask for God's help.
Yeah.
Mike, what is your view?
I think I'll piggyback on something Ayo said. The fact that we as Christians believe we are made in the image of God. And actually it's just something that points to our inherent human dignity, that everyone has something in them which should never be violated. So, and that's where something like racism comes in, because once you start violating someone's race, you're basically oppressing them and downgrading them and saying you're not the same human that I am. I think therefore then it's upon us to, even when discussing matters like this, to to shift it back to that we are of a human dignity and human value, and we matter as human beings regardless of who you are. As regards racism in football, I think there's a sense in which, yes, football has been tackling it, and even at this time when the atmosphere is really about Black Lives Matter, we've seen the Premier League, the first round of games, everyone had Black Lives Matter on the back of their jerseys, and before every game there was a kneeling down, taking a knee just to present, to make a statement on that. But I think beyond just that, probably where football has been lacking a bit is in the action. So, for example, even by last year, I think late last year, September, October, November, thereabouts, England went to play Bulgaria, and still people like Sterling were being racially abused. I mean, there were some images early this year of a Porto player. He's called Musa Marega. He was being racially abused by opposition fans, and then as he's trying to walk away, people started telling him, don't walk off the pitch. And it almost looked as if it was a violent altercation. I don't know. Whereas I would not agree with walking off the pitch, I think I understand why people are getting to that point. Because now it's a point of, there's not as much action being taken. So, for example, the most that people are seeing is a stadium ban, or a stadium ban for 2 games, then guys come back. I don't think that will stop any racist from making a racist chant next time, because all they know is, I'll just miss 2 games from coming to the stadium. I'll still watch on my TV or somewhere else, but I'll just miss 2 games and then I'm back in the stadium. If it's a fine to the clubs, I don't think even racists have any, it's affecting them in any way. So I think there's more important action that probably football must take and should take, so that this is being tackled in a way where, beyond just taking a knee and having Black Lives Matter on the back of their jerseys, there's a way now people know and feel that racism is being tackled.
That's true. I think we've seen it enough. We've seen, bottles and objects thrown at especially the black players and things like those happen, and in different parts of Europe. But I think I like what Ayo said. It's something that is innately a sinful issue. Human beings are always trying to find something to cause prejudice against others, be it race, economic status, or for us here in this country, tribe that keeps eating us up. Where even in our football here, we know tribe comes to play. We know there are clubs where, because of tribe, one player gets selected versus another. Our club have tribal affiliations, and so I think it's a continuous thing that we have to keep battling. But I think Christians need to be at the fore of reminding people that you can't look down on someone else. You're right, because when you're looking down on someone else, you technically are trying to look down on God and His view of who is of value and who is not, because we are all made in His image. And that's why I think it's saddening we ought to rise up against. Football make a statement in support of what's happening in other parts of the world. But it was rather funny to see. I was mentioning this a bit earlier, to see Mane running when others are taking a knee. And he seemed not to be very present, realizing what happened. That was a very. But at least we're happy to the African man who did that, because if it was a white guy who did that, whoa,
it would have been an issue.
Yet it's just a mistake that has happened.
But also maybe
let's move to our next part of our segment.
Sorry, T, just something that was also interesting once it's resumed was by Raheem Sterling, a black player. So that was also something interesting.
T. I just wonder sometimes, and it's a very hypothetical kind of thinking. What would happen if black people were in the position of white people? Would things be different?
Hayo manze, unaleta mavitu deep huku bana. Deep vibes.
Yeah, but because to be honest, the issue of racism is really sad. You know, and I just wonder because we especially we in Africa have the tendency to take the moral high ground, but because we've not been faced with a specific issue that has put us in that situation. For example, sorry, for example, how do, yes, Mike, sorry.
No, give your example, then
I was just saying, like, one thing that is becoming very apparent is about how, because I've seen it personally, how people treat the Chinese, for example, the Chinese in Kenya. What attitude do people have toward them? How do you separate? How do you stop becoming overly sensitive about not wanting to be subjugated or colonized again, but still maintaining that respect and saying that you're still a creation of God, you're in the image of God, and still treat another man or another person of a different race with respect.
The same respect, yeah. I think I just wanted to say that I think it's a foundational philosophy issue. So, for example, during the civil rights movement in the 60s, there was Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, and both had different philosophies. So Martin Luther King Jr. was for integration, even as we are fighting for civil rights. Malcolm X was more, no, we're not going to integrate. We'll be the Africans, or rather the African Americans, being on top over the whites. And I think once you realize that and what is at the heart of you personally, then that's what will drive you. So as you're saying, that's why now some people resort to xenophobic attacks, which is what you're talking about, even with the Chinese or whichever other race it is. I think foundational, it's, are you looking for integration or are you looking for separation? And I think as we're talking about being made in the image of God, that's how the Bible begins. At the end, you have integration, where at Revelation, all tribes, all nations come together as one. And I think that's a more, it's a better, or rather, it's the philosophy that we should adopt as Christians.